I'm Bryan Finster. I'm a distinguished engineer for Defense Unicorns, working as a value stream architect for the Air Force's Platform One. I'm also a board advisor for the Value Stream Management Consortium, and I firmly believe that if we deploy more, we will sleep better. And I want to talk to you a little bit about a journey I went on in a previous organization where we were working in a 25 million line monolith that deployed every quarter. It had hundreds of developers working on it. And we had leadership ask for how can we increase our release frequencies so that we can actually deliver something like the business needs when they need it. So they want us to go from from quarterly to biweekly. And we started digging into continuous delivery, literally bought the book, read through the book, and decided that biweekly was too slow. Why can't we just go every single day? And I'll tell you that we actually had a project manager assigned to this effort. And when we told him that we were going to go for daily, he said, well, they only said biweekly. And we're like, well, that's not good enough. And he said, well, I don't want to be part of that. I'm like, okay. And so we don't need you. And we went ahead. So we ran some experiments. We knew that the current application, we couldn't get it there. So we were going to have to decompose that application. And so we started designing what the teams would look like for doing that decomposition, running a strangler pattern in the application. We focused on breaking out discrete business domains from the application, and then we started aligning what the team structure would look like so we could give that feedback to management and they could start helping us get those teams built. And doing that, we were going for a loosely coupled architecture. For continuous delivery to be a real thing, every team needed to be able to deploy in any sequence. We didn't need any of the release trains that we had suffered through the previous implementation of a scaling framework. We wanted to go quite a bit faster than that. And we created a CD platform team that their job was to template pipelines, not to own the pipelines, but to template pipelines that people on the product teams could then extend to meet their specific capabilities needs for whatever tech stack they were delivering in. And we learned a few things from that. Number one, product teams and pipelines were far more effective than tying teams together with a scaling framework. We were able to, on the team that I was on, we were able to deliver independently of any other team. At one time, we were delivering to a distribution center 12 times a day and getting feedback from the DC on, do you like this new feature? The question, why can't we deliver today, was the best tool for uncovering organizational problems. And issues within the team of just we lack the skill or we lack the testing we need or whatever, but even broader than that, we have these handoffs or we have the cab or whatever it is, and start removing those impediments relentlessly, just using that question, why can't we deliver today? We also learned, and this wasn't an expected outcome, this was just something we learned, that continuous delivery improves not only the outcomes, but morale. All the teams that were working in this flow were much happier than teams that were not. We were able to release on demand. We had confidence in what we were building that was going to work before we delivered it. And we had to work very closely as a team to do that. We had to build a lot of teamwork. And that just morale improvement was great. We also learned we needed better metrics. What we were doing was, for measuring things, is we still had some of those agile metrics that people like so much. And we were using some of those. They didn't really do what we wanted to do, because when your software delivery is about people, it's not about technology. And if we're measuring software delivery, we're measuring people. And if we're measuring people, it's the act of measuring will change behavior. So you'd have to be very diligent about what metrics you picked. And so I'm going to talk to you about some mistakes we made. Test coverage. For continuous delivery, we knew that we had to get much better at testing. One of my roles was, after we had laid out what the teams were going to look like, I joined a team as tech lead on that team to figure out how we can do this for real and not just have pipelines. And when I start, reading through all the things that are supposed to happen in continuous delivery, I was like terrified because we didn't know how to test. And the goal is I commit code and it goes to production or the pipeline fails it. So we had to get a lot better at testing. And so we said, okay, well, we'll just set a code coverage limit. We'll say that you have to be 90% code coverage. And management put that on evals, 90% code coverage. And we thought what we'd get was improved testing. What we really got was a vast increase in the number of bad tests. There was no investment in teaching people how to test better. It's just, just be quality hobbyists, go learn how to test. But when, a few months later, we go look at the tests, we just do code review, and just the number of tests that had assertions that didn't actually do anything meaningful. And I've talked to people about this before, that if you impose this, you'll find tests that have no assertions at all. But this was even more scary because at first glance, it looked like it was testing something, and it just wasn't. What we really should have done was focus on the outcomes of good testing. Test coverage is not a metric for good testing, but the ability to deploy rapidly with low defect rates means that we absolutely have a good quality process. Another mistake, we wanted to make sure that teams were meeting their commitments. We thought, well, we're doing continuous delivery, so you should be able to deliver better. You should be able to meet the commitments better and make the business happier. So measure the completion rate. What did you commit to versus what was completed? Reality is that it caused people to focus on planning instead of actually doing. That if people would get into the details to make sure that they didn't blow their sprint. And what we really should have been focusing on was the lead time, how big is our backlog, the development cycle time, how long does it take to get things done, and how do we shrink that so we can become more consistent, and again, our defect rates, because if we focus really hard on shrinking the size of how long it takes to deliver a task or a story, and we don't focus on defect rates, it could incentivize people to skip steps. Then in 2017, we had an enterprise goal. We had been running these experiments in different areas in the company, and we knew that continuous delivery made things better. And so the CTO decided that what we need to do is roll continuous delivery out to all the teams. That if we can expand it across the enterprise, we'll get more efficient, effective, and sustainable delivery, which is what we saw in every team that was doing this correctly. And so, more experiments. Number one, we created a global platform team that was responsible for creating an opinionated CD platform, something where continuous delivery was much easier to do than your old bad ways of working. So you could use complicated branching structures and all kinds of bad things. You could automate it, but it was going to cause you a little bit of pain, and you're going to have a lot less pain if you did a CD flow. We also gamified signals around, are you doing continuous delivery? We brought in Hygeia as a dashboard to show the delivery metrics. And then we gamified Hygeia around good practices around CD. Are you doing trunk-based development? Are you actually executing CI? Are you deploying, how's your deploy frequency increasing? And your pipelines are stable. They're not just breaking and staying broken. And from that, we learned some more things. Number one, those gamified metrics were really effective for helping the first half of the bell curve for change. We even had people competing to, and challenging us on, are we measuring things correctly, because they wanted higher scores, and pushing for improvements on how we're scoring things and pushing for improvements on how they were delivering things. And it was a really good feedback loop. At the time, I was actually the product owner for the dashboard. And so partnering with those people to improve the dashboard so that they had better information, it was a good feedback loop. And also the opinionated pipelines encouraged the latter half to go and become CD curious. That, hey, how can I make this easier? Well, come talk to us. We'll explain to you a little bit about how this is supposed to work. We'll talk to you about trunk-based development, and show you how to do it. And in fact, that portion of that caused us to create a dojo specifically to help people get on that path who didn't know how to get there themselves. We also learned we needed a better way to communicate why we were doing this. The why is incredibly important. If they don't understand why, then they know one that can't do it well, and they may not be interested at all. The CTO understood why. We in platform understood why. A few advocates around the company who'd done it on the experiments understood why, but how do we communicate that more broadly to management who needs to help facilitate this? Well, then in 2018, Accelerate came out, and it validated what we had learned, right? We knew this, and then having them print this made it much easier to explain what we're trying to do, is that CD improves delivery performance and quality, helps improve culture, and reduce burnout and deployment pain. We saw all these things. We wanted this for everybody, and this is why. And so I actually got budget to buy 6 cases of the book, distributed it to SVPs, VPs, senior directors across the entire enterprise with a note and said, please read this for this reason, and hoped that they would read it, you know. We also talked about these 4 key metrics that they talk about in Accelerate that talk about delivery performance, lead time, deploy frequency, mean time to restore, and change fail percentage, and said these are some good metrics we could look at to track our journey. But we caused a big problem. And not just in our organization. The reason I'm passionate about this talk is we are seeing this more broadly across a bunch of organizations as people are spinning up tools and selling them for DORA metrics. The 4 metrics make absolute sense in the context of the book. If you read the entire book, you understand how to use these things. And like I said, measuring behavior is complex. Thing is that people don't read books. It's incredibly frustrating. And by the way, you can buy Accelerate as an audiobook. It takes like, I don't know, 5 or 8 hours to listen to it. I highly recommend it. But people didn't read the books, and not everybody didn't read the books. I found several people with worn out copies. There was a VP, her copy was bent, had Post-it notes stuck in it to bookmark things, highlight. I mean, she was digging into it, and so I knew that she would be a good advocate for what we're trying to do, but I saw others that were covered with dust. And the way we were communicating it, and depending on people to read the books, it sounded like all we have to do is measure. And so it came across as we oversimplified what we were trying to do and just use these metrics, should be fine. And, again, measuring people is complex. Well, we made it sound like it was obvious. And because we got lost in translation, it drove into chaos. We saw a lot of bad outcomes. People started using DORA metrics in ways that were never intended. And so here's some examples of those. Setting goals. I've literally seen OKRs wrapped around DORA metrics, where this quarter our DORA metrics will improve by this much. OKRs are business metrics. Nobody cares. The customer doesn't care about your DORA metrics. And the fact of the matter is that high-performing organizations didn't get high-performing by focusing on DORA metrics. They focused on improving delivery of value to the end user. How do we continuously and relentlessly reduce the drag, reduce the friction, improve the value of what we're delivering, deliver the right things on time, so they're useful, get feedback rapidly. That's what they focused on, not DORA metrics. And again, goals should focus on business value, not improving metrics. I've seen them used for productivity. Now we can stack rank teams to find out which team's slacking, which team's really, really good. And that's false as well. Every team has their own context. They have their own code base. They have their own people. Everything is different on every single team, and you can't just compare apples to apples with DORA metrics. And that's not for what it's for anyway. We're trying to measure the health and of the improvement effort. Are we getting better? The last change we made to our process, did it make things better or worse? It's information to have us go inspect what we're doing and see how to make that better. And also, if you lack the right culture, they're going to be destructive anyway. If you've got a culture of fear in your organization, measuring people will cause a massive amount of fear and everything will get worse. I've seen them used for speed. A common misconception of the deploy frequency is about we're going to go faster, we're going to improve our deploy frequency. That's not what it's for. Deploy frequency is about shrinking batch size. because shrinking batch size is the best tool we have for uncovering the problems that we need to solve. That by reducing the size of work we deliver and improving the frequency of how we're delivering, you have to solve problems with, oh, we have a cab, well, that won't work, or we don't test well, we have manual testing, that won't work. We have to fix all these problems, and shrinking batch size is what that's for. And the fact is that if we focus on quality and reduce our batch size, we'll get speed. If we focus on speed, everything else gets worse. And, finally, vanity radiators. Now, this is not something from that organization. This is an entirely different famous e-commerce site I'm aware of that was shown to me back in March by a colleague, where they have created a DORA dashboard. And I'm seeing more of these spring up where we have DORA metrics and they lack any sort of context. You can tell from this that they really care about deploy because that's the biggest thing that they have on their dashboard. And if you understand continuous delivery and you look at some of these metrics, there's all kinds of red flags when you just spend a few minutes. And I won't go into it until Q&A if anyone's interested. But there's all kinds of red flags in here that I saw after I spent a few minutes looking at it. But so what? You did 437 deploys. Is that for a team or is that for the entire organization? Is that for the day or for the year? What does that even mean? And what do I do with it? Great. We had 645 deploys. Is that better or worse? And what action am I going to take with this? It's just a vanity radiator. So the reality is that these metrics are health indicators. How are we doing on reducing batch size? Or is our quality and reliability improving? Are we reducing toil? Because reducing toil makes it easier for us to deliver and reduces stress. Are we getting faster feedback from the end user? Delivery is to production so we can get feedback. Do we have happier customers? Because that's really what matters. But even at least as important than that, do we have happier teams? Because if you have happy teams, they're going to deliver more secure solutions, higher quality solutions, because they can focus on the value delivery and not be focusing on the stress they're under. There's also a common misconception that there's 4 DORA metrics. Yes, there's these 4 key metrics that show the health of continuous delivery, but those aren't the DORA metrics. If you read Accelerate, a brief view, when I was preparing this talk, I went through and pulled out the ones I knew were in there that were important, and I came up with 14. It's really important. Do we have the right culture? If we don't have the right culture, we're going to struggle, and so we need to focus on how do we improve the culture. Flow metrics. We need to look at the total lead time. We need to look at work in progress, reduce work in progress. Those are very important. Continuous integration. The DORA metrics, those 4 key metrics are trailing indicators. The continuous integration metrics are leading indicators for those, and leading indicators for flow, and leading indicators for everything else in the organization. So we have short duration branches? Are we integrating code daily or more frequently? Or how fast can we detect a defect? And finally, are our customers happy? Are we reducing our downtime? Are we getting better customer feedback? We need better information radiators instead of vanity radiators. And we need to add some tips in there what good looks like. So this is actually an example from something that my team is building for Platform 1. On the left, whip load. How much work is in progress relative to how many people are in the organization? And this could be at the team level or all the way up to the platform level. Where are we at? How do we reduce our WIP? And again, it tells you that it's either really good or poor, or there's even one that's overloaded if it goes to red. And on the right, continuous integration is the engine that's driving improvement. So we really want to focus on CI. We can gamify CI because CI is something that the team has absolute control over. And so what we have here is a gold line that says if you are integrating code more frequently than this gold line, you're doing continuous integration. If it's less frequently than that, you're not meeting the definition of continuous integration. So how can we work to figure out what we need to do to break things down better and test better so we can integrate code more frequently? Do we need to fix code review or whatever it is? Show people what good looks like so they have something to aim for as a team to drive their continuous improvement process on the team instead of just random, we need better donuts. But When you do that, you also have to make sure that people understand how. It's not good enough to tell people, this is what good looks like and you're here. It's, this is what good looks like. How can we help you get to good or better? And so in our tool we're building, we have improvement tips in there that go to good information that you can find, how to break down work better, how to do test-driven development and feature flags, how to do code review better, everything. How do we make the CI flow a lot better? Metrics have relationships with each other. And a leading indicator for something is a lagging indicator for something else. And so the top level metric we should have to be worried about is business value. Are we delivering something valuable and are end users happy with it? And honestly, is the cost less than the income we're getting from it, so it's sustainable? Do we have good objectives that are measurable objectives with key results that are driven by improving business value? Flow metrics. How do we improve the flow, find constraints across our entire organization? How do we look for the problems we have with silos or handoffs so that we can reorganize things around improving the flow of each value stream? And then, of course, continuous delivery metrics. These are very important because we're trying to become more efficient. If we can drive efficiency at this level, then all we need is good ideas. And of course, continuous integration. It's a leading indicator for the CD metrics, and helping with this will help everything else above it. You need to understand when, as a leader, if you're looking at these numbers, what's the data source? If I'm looking at continuous integration data, that's coming directly from my source management tool, and the data quality on that's very, very high. The work is happening in the source management tool. As I start climbing up towards the top, it gets lower fidelity. So the flow metrics are coming from workflow management tools like Jira. And that's depending on people physically moving things in Jira and updating tasks. They'll only do that if they see value in that. So it's everybody's job to understand what the value of moving those cards are so that teams see value in doing that, to communicate within the team what's going on so that that data is meaningful at all. And of course, as you climb higher, it becomes more abstract. You have to have the right culture. If you're going to measure stuff, you have to have a culture of trust. You have to have a shared mission where people understand what our goals actually are, so they're not just kind of randomly working. You need to foster learning and improving as a culture so that people understand that these things are there to help. They're not whips to beat people with. You also need to understand, again, how these metrics relate to each other. You can't improve flow without improving continuous integration. You can improve it to a point, but then their flow metrics will collapse. It hit a border on the continuous integration metrics, and that's as good as you can get. And so you really need to focus on, if I need to improve this, I need to improve everything below that. And if you want to improve continuous integration, you need to invest in the people doing the work. And this is super important. Me and my team that were piloting this, everybody else I know, we have to learn this on the fly because nobody invests in the workforce trying to get this done. I had to become a quality hobbyist. I had to become a security hobbyist. The expectation that I'm going to spend my after hours time digging into these things to support the business goals and hope that I find the right information instead of something bad. Early on in this journey, I was like, hey, we should implement GitFlow. And thank goodness somebody directed me away from that. But that was the best information I had. And so investing in the people so that they understand how to get things better is incredibly important, or the metrics don't matter. Metrics absolutely need balance. Again, we are trying to improve efficiency by reducing the size of the batches. Each change set, get it smaller and smaller. Because that activity of driving for smaller batch is going to uncover a lot of pain, so we can remove that pain and make our lives better. But we also need to make sure that we are balancing that with quality outcomes. Not test coverage, but are we delivering a lot of defects to production? Is that getting better or worse? Because if we focus only on shrinking batch size, we don't focus on quality, then people will be incentivized to skip the quality steps. And to achieve actual balance, we need to make sure we're not burning out our teams. You can become very efficient and very effective for a very short period of time, burn the teams out because they're working 16-hour days, and then you have a huge brain drain as everybody quits. And so focusing on team health as a guardrail against burnout and focusing on quality as a guardrail against incentivizing speed instead of reduced batch size is very important to have that balance. So some closing thoughts. Again, those 4 outcome metrics are only the tip of the iceberg. There are many more. Product development is a very complex interaction of people, process, and product. There are no simple metrics. I've been asked, hey, I just need a number that I can show the VP to show that we're doing well. I'm like, that's not possible. I can't do that. I won't even try because I can't show that with one metric. You actually have to understand the work to make any of these metrics meaningful to you. And you have to make sure that if we measure anything, we need 1 or 2 guardrail metrics to make sure that as a group, things are getting better, but we're not incentivizing, just creating perverse incentives where we're focusing really hard on something like deploy frequency, and then defect rates go through the roof because people are saying, okay, you want me to go faster, and so they start cutting corners. Metrics are absolutely a critical part of the improvement toolbox. You have to have a baseline, you have to know how you're doing, but you can't measure your way to improvement. All they do is cause you to ask questions. They don't answer we're getting better. They answer, they cause you to investigate how we can get better or why things went south after the last change. And we use them to monitor for the next experiment, right? It's like for every single thing we try, did it get better or worse? Okay, now how do we try to adjust? Because we're always wrong, and that should be the expected outcome. And we use the metrics to measure how wrong we were and adjust. And we don't measure people. The lowest common denominator we measure is teams. If we're trying to measure people, then it will destroy immediately teamwork. I've seen it happen on multiple occasions because people will then immediately focus on their needs instead of the team's needs. We focus on the team and we invest in the people because their business knowledge and their ability to deliver the mission and their understanding of the mission is the most valuable asset that we have. Some resources I highly recommend. Of course, Accelerate. Accelerate's a great book for really understanding the things that drive improvement. Sooner, Safer, Happier by Jonathan Smart is a really good book for leadership on patterns and anti-patterns of enterprise improvement. Engineering the Digital Transformation is a good book for both leadership and engineers on what it is we're trying to do and how, applying the right manufacturing principles to software development, which manufacturing principles do not apply, and the nuts and bolts of getting good, stable, quality signal delivered frequently and continuous improvement. It's a great book for that. And then I created a short link here for Dave Farley's continuous delivery channel. For the last year or more, he's been releasing a stream of really good videos on YouTube that I wish that I'd had this resource when we started this journey. Dave is an expert in this field. He's the co-author of the book Continuous Delivery, and he's got real world experience in multiple contexts with fintech and healthcare and everything. And he knows this stuff. And just spend the next few days just watching videos. You'll be happy. And if you want to talk more about it, I'm always happy to talk. You can reach me at Bryan.Finster at defenseunicorns.com. You can reach me on LinkedIn at Bryan Finster, and I also have a Medium site where I post the 5 Minutes of Simplifying DevOps series, or 5-minute DevOps series, where I kind of take things that have made me unhappy and turn them into happier blog posts, hopefully. So you can reach me there. So with that, any questions?
It's the awkward moment where people are like, should I unmute? Should I turn on my camera? Yeah. Or you can hit questions in Zoom or Slack or anything. Bryan, also thank you for giving this talk. Where are you talking next? Because you speak a lot now.
Well, this talk, I'm really trying to give this talk a lot because I see a lot of pain out there, and so I'm giving this talk next at Northwest Arkansas Tech Summit next week, and the following week at All Day DevOps.
Cool.
And that'll be the last one.
And you're retiring it forever?
No, I don't retire my talks. There's too much work in those. But I'll tell you that when I posted I was asked by IT Revolution to post a short teaser on Tech Beacon about this talk, and the amount of oh good, oh great, this we're in so much pain about this right now sort of feedback I got told me that I was on the right track, that this is something that is really hurting people and we need to fix.
Hey, Bryan, if I could ask, what was your most surprising revelation when you looked through all like the responses to the why can't you do it? Like what did you think like was like you didn't expect that you learned from and maybe helped give you insight on some other path?
Like, why can't we do CD?
Yeah, why can't you deploy whatever the question was? I don't. Well, yeah, why can't you deploy frequently? Yeah.
Oh yeah. So why can't we deploy daily instead of every quarter?
Yeah.
I think that honestly the biggest surprise of going through that journey was just the morale improvement. Right? That I was not expecting that. And the other thing that I learned was that when I started on that journey, I was old school tech lead. I'm the tech lead, do what I say, right? By the time I'd finished that journey, by the time like 18 months later, I'm the tech lead. How can I help you guys? We make decisions together. As a tech lead, I have veto power, and if I use it, I've already lost the argument. I had to become a much better leader to actually implement CD. There was just no way we were going to get to continuous delivery unless I became a better leader.
What do you think was the morale, and I'll see by time after this, what do you think was the most morale boosting aspect of it? Was it a lack of, I could see from my experience thinking about smaller batch size, a less fear of deployments, right? When you have a long time, we're scared to deploy because we know it's going to go bad. Or do you think it was more, less about the fear and more about just seeing the value deployed and people driving off of that, or maybe both?
Yeah. It was the latter. The improved quality is definitely good. That's the deploy more, sleep better thing, right? But the job I had before this organization, I deployed all the time. It was fun. I got immediate feedback from my customers, good or bad, but at least I got feedback. And when you're deploying quarterly, who cares? Any feedback you get is just going to be negative. And you don't even know if you caused it or not. It's just a giant organization in pain, right? But the endorphin hit you get from deploy and feedback is awesome. It's just deploying is addictive, right? And it just makes everybody happier.
Yeah, definitely. It makes sense. Yeah, I see that. I see both sides of that.
Yeah.
There's some questions in the Zoom chat. I was going to read through them. I think some people might have left already because it's lunch. So first of all, thanks for spending lunch with us.
Sure.
The buffet in the back is open till 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
How is CD different than Kanban, depending on what part of the US you're from or world?
Well, Kanban's a flow control method. Continuous delivery is actually, I'll tell you, we created at DevOps Enterprise Summit, we run into a situation where people claim continuous delivery because they have build and deploy automation, and they aim for the wrong target and don't see the outcomes we expect, like improved morale. And so ranting about that at the bar and gathering some like-minded people together, we created minimumcd.org. And so you go to minimumcd.org, you can see what we defined as the standard definition for continuous delivery. And I was very excited yesterday to get a pull request from Dave Farley to sign on to that he agreed with our definition of continuous delivery. And that's absolute bare minimum CD. If you're not doing those things, you're not doing CD. If you're doing more than those things, you're doing better at CD. But like I said, Kanban is a flow control method of work. Continuous delivery is just act of being able to have releasable software deliverable on demand, which means you have to improve your entire quality process to get that done. And, oh, I'm sorry, you're always releasable at all times. I mean, if you're continuous delivery, you may not release all the time, but you're always releasable.
So we can wind it down if there's not more questions. Bryan, we're gonna hang out here for a second. I'm sure there's questions.
Yeah, I mean,
I always have a good canned one, Bryan. Right? So you're, and I'm gonna say you're a coder on a team.
I'm a what?
I'm gonna give you a frame. You're a coder on a team.
Yeah.
You want to do this.
Yeah.
What do you do? What's your recommendation? Now, a lot of the people in our community are just, and I don't like to use the word just coders, but they're not managers, they're not tech leads. They're people that actually do the work. You might remember that.
Yeah.
What do they do? How do they, if they want to do this, what should they do?
Well, there's a couple things. I mean, number one, I'd start floating the idea on the team and find out how many people are interested. You can't just force it to happen. It's going to take the entire team to get it done. But you can't even get it done if you convince everybody on the team. What you really should do is go talk to, I go to the highest senior leader that you can get your hands on and talk to them about some of the things information you can pull from the world about how it makes things better. And try to convince people that this is something we should try, and give it, again, the minimumcd.org, I mean, one of those things was, it's a really deep topic, and it can be overwhelming if you're just trying to pull random information from the internet because you either get stuff that's super vague or it has a lot of detail, like the book CD, or, continuous delivery. And where do you start? And so this was the thing. It's like, let's give people a minimum target to head for, that it's less than a page. Just focus on these things. And so, take that to the senior leadership and say, if we can focus on these things, we can get this result at the top, which is improved outcome for the business, improved morale, and all these other things, right? And so it's a matter of playing the long game and working on persuasion, and also showing people, if hopefully given the chance, to prove that it actually works.
And so what if the leadership says no? What do you do at that point? You say, I really want to do continuous delivery.
In 2017, a teammate and I gave a talk at DevOps Enterprise Summit, and this was the very first time I'd spoken outside of Walmart. And we stood up on stage, and we talked about what it was like for a team, because you go to DevOps Enterprise Summit and you hear all these things about the organization. Yeah, that's great. But we wanted to talk about the reality, what it was on a team to deliver CD and the change in the team. And at the end of that talk, I asked everybody, who's a manager in the room? And of course, it's DevOps Enterprise Summit. Everyone's a manager, right? And if everyone raised their hands, I said, excellent, this last slide's for you. And I brought up the slide and I said, don't send teams down the path of continuous delivery and get cold feet, because if you do, they will keep pushing for CD, but maybe not for you. And so if you're if you are working and you know that this is a better way to work, or you think it's a better way to work, and all you get's no, we're not going to do that, quit, change jobs, go someplace where there's a green field where you can have a better life.
And that was the answer I was looking for. Bryan, is it okay if people ping you on LinkedIn and say, hey, I really want to work in a CD environment. I tried my best. Can you point me in the right direction?
Yeah.
To a different place?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a recruiter.
Like-minded people.
I'm not a recruiter, but I can point you where there's like-minded people.
That's what I was looking for, because we're always about the coder, improving the coder's life. Everyone deserves to sleep at night and not write code at 2 a.m.
Right.